the language is legally necessary, but it doesn't reflect the culture that any of us would want to see with our staff. It's we do recognise that there is a human cost to what we're deciding here today. On the financial side, first of all, we do have to note that these redundancies, or while there's an initial cost of 5 million, it will bring savings to the taxpayer within 2 years at 2.6 million pounds. This is very much in line with the One Somerset business case. There is a huge credit to all the team who've implemented the business case, and the final costs are close to those that were projected at its publication. As obviously each role is made redundant in line with the contract of employment. This includes pension strain for those nearing retirement, and as the paper makes clear, the total cost of council is not what any individual receives. Also, by recruiting all but one of our senior managers from within the existing previous 5 councils, we have been able to minimise the total costs. But more importantly, I'd like to mention the human cost of these redundancies. The 29 people who hold these roles, they're losing their jobs, but they have contributed hugely to the councils that make up this new unitary authority. As the paper points out, they've made between them a total of 630 years of public service to our residents. There are senior members of council staff, and each of us will be able to tell stories of how grateful we are for their advice, their support, their hard work over many, many years. It's not really appropriate to go through and name names in this forum, but this includes people who did so much to keep our residents safe on Somerset levels through the floods of 2013 and 14. They include staff that have worked incredibly hard to mitigate the impact of the largest construction project in Europe on our residents, and have been working very hard. And we're with bated breath to see whether something is imminently about to happen on the gravity site near Bridgewater. And there are staff here who worked incredibly hard on that project. As is pointed out elsewhere in the council papers, staff have delivered this new council on top of business as usual, and many, while doing that, they knew that their own personal jobs were at risk, and the professionalism that many of them showed through that process it just shows what fantastic staff they have been, and what incredible servants to Somerset they are. We're fortunate to have such dedicated staff, and we've been fortunate to have had these 29 people working for Somerset. This is a sad and fond farewell, and I wish them all the best for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If I could cross to Faye Purbrick, who is seconding the recommendation.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to second the motion and reserve the right to speak later. Thank you.
Okay, I can see a hand up at the back. There she is. Yep. Yep. Thank you.
Would you like me to stand, Chairman, because I am vertically challenged?
Yes.
Would that be better? Okay. I'd like to thank the leader. I had the unfortunate task of sitting on this panel, which I found particularly difficult. I'm not here to make any political, please don't think that. We agreed the business case. We know what it was, but I would just like to say that we need to give a sincere appreciation to some of the most dedicated and committed, superb staff that I believe this new authority needs to recognise that this is a massive expertise that we're going to lose. The new authority will lose out because they are not here with us, and I appreciate it's a difficult decision. But what I would say is that we have to sincerely thank these people, because some of them would have stayed with their own local authorities. We know that. Each and every one of us that sat on a local authority know how brilliant these people were. Me particularly, I thought very, very saddened that I'm not going to be working alongside them. But one thing I would like to say is that there are more to come. There is more pain to come. And I would ask through you, Mr. Chairman, congratulations, by the way. I would like to say to you, Mr. Chairman, that I think the leader, I would ask you to if we can speed up this process. I think the fact is that here we are a year after the elections and we're only just gone through the first lot of redundancies. I think we need to speed the process up so the pain is less for those people that will have to go through this new programme. And I would urge you to do this, please, to not have them dangling, which I think many of them feel. I think the mental health problems from some of the staff has been immense. And because they enjoyed their jobs, they really loved working where they were doing and the jobs they did. So if I could ask you that, leader, what I'd also like to say is, can we, we recognise these are posts, but these were real people who gave their years to our authorities. And we have to, whilst I know they're going to get redundancy, I know we've known what's going to happen, I still want the recognition from them, please. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, leader.
Thank you, Jill. Did you want to say anything, Bill, or?
Yeah, just I hope that in my comments mirrored yours in terms of the sadness with which we see this. Fully understand the need to get the staffing structure in place. It's also incredibly important that we do so in a safe and legal way to protect the council from challenge and to support our staff every step of the way, whether they stay with us or whether they decide to make other arrangements. And we stand with them and by them and support them as much as we are able in this very, very difficult process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark Healy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. During the recess, leader, we're looking over my shoulder at my notes, because what I was going to say is ad infinitum what you've said, but and I sympathise with what Councillor Slocum said, Chairman, but we have a duty of care to the people of Somerset, don't we? When we took on board the fact we're going to go for a unitary council, we did supply a business case, which the leaders quite rightfully what was said. I questioned at that particular meeting, because I was in it, of the director, and asked him about the savings. Yes, you're right, 2.6 million. I asked the amount of time it would take for payback, which was very short. And I also asked, I think I've got this right, somebody will correct me, what further savings were to be made, because we owe it. We already talked about if you like, the NHS, we've talked about adult social care, we've talked about everything that we're short of money of. So we have the responsibility, and I do sympathise with those people that are being made redundant. Some of them want to go, some of them won't. Unfortunately, that's life as we know it. But we have an obligation and a duty of care to save money. And I may even look to the director now, Jason Vaughan, to actually say what other savings we're going to make, because if that's the road we're travelling down to start, we prove the savings, we prove that we've got more money to give to the people of Somerset. So am I right in asking, could I ask that question of the director, or is that inappropriate? Thank you.
Jason, where is he? Are you able to respond, Jason?
Yeah, good afternoon, Council. Just in terms of the LGR business case, just to remind you that was an investment of £16.5 million once-off costs that would deliver ongoing savings of £18.5 million. When you set the budget in February this year, we'd identified approximately £16 million worth of that is built into the medium-term financial plan over the next 3 years.
Okay, I can see no further hands. Bill, do you want to say anything further before we? Yeah, and then I'll come back to you.
Councillor Purbrick's reserved her right to speak, and I think she wants to now.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo what's been said by various members around the room. It is an amazing amount of knowledge and service that I think, should be celebrating from these people today. Obviously, with restructuring, there are changes, and some of these people sadly will be leaving us. But I think that we can probably all think of some of those people and the things that they've done that will stay with us and the people of Somerset for forever. I'm also really grateful to the team who've continued to deliver the business case, but I'd also like to thank the team who pulled together the business case. And I think that in the time that we worked together to put this together, and the structures and the numbers and all the scrutiny and everything that went into that, we're seeing now the delivery of those numbers starting to come to fruition. And of course, as the co-author of the business case, I would have loved to have seen some of it delivered in a slightly different way. And I echo Councillor Slocum that it would be nice if it had been delivered slightly faster. But I recognise that we're on a path, and why we're on the path. And I would like to give my congratulations as well to Councillor Keach, who's not with us today, who's kept driving this forward. Thank you to everything that the team have done. Thank you to everybody who works in our council and who may be wondering what the future will hold for them. I think we want to make sure that we have the best possible talent in Somerset, delivering the best possible service for the people of Somerset. And I'm sure that Bill and Duncan will work to make sure that they shape that council in this way. And those of us on this side of the room will continue to hold them to account and scrutinise to make sure that happens. And if we don't think we're seeing the scrutiny, we'll be asking for a bit more of it. But thank you, and thank you to everybody who this paper affects.
Thank you, Faye. Bill?
Nothing further to respond to in the debate, and propose we move to the vote.
Okay, if we move to the vote, can I have a show of hands? All those in favour? Anyone against? And are there any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. We move on to item 9, which is the report from the Chief Executive. I pass over to him.
Thank you, Chair. I won't dwell on this report. It's fairly straightforward and follows very, very clearly from the previous item. As we've been forming the new council, there's a number of roles which we need to appoint to, which are within the purview of the council. So if I can just go to the recommendations at section 2, we're asking that council note the appointments of the service directors, which are set out in section 6.1. We're asking that council in 2.2 designate and empower David Clark as chief statutory, say that again, statutory chief officer function of a monitoring officer for the council. And we're asking that council notes the appointment of Claire Winter as the executive director of Children's and Family Services and approve a salary for that post as well. And it's a fairly straightforward paper, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, can I come to Bill, who is proposing acceptance of this?
Very happy to formally propose and reserve the right to speak after any debate.
Andy?
Thank you. Happy to second. And I would say, firstly, congratulations to all those. I know there was a rigorous process that was gone through. I know that it took a lot of time and effort in terms of officers, and actually a lot of councillors in the room were involved as well, which I think was a really positive experience. So I think we welcome that. I think it sets us well as we move forward into the next stages. But, you know, there's some good news here, some great appointments, and I really look forward to a strong team moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Bill?
Yeah, just to echo those congratulations. Just on the point of the enlarged member panels, we took the decision to move up to 5 members, and that was because we wanted to see all the predecessor authorities of the council reflected in those appointment committees. We're very aware that if it was only a minority of the councils that were represented, the optic might be unfairly seen by some. So I thank all members who were involved in that process, and particularly our HR team, who I gave that immense headache to. My apologies, but thank you. Thank you so much to Chris and all your team.
I see no hands, so if we move to the vote, the Chief Executive, we have, sorry.
Forgive me,
Lee.
Yeah, Councillor Redmond, just this is a quick point. I noticed that item 2.2 that we're voting on is the appointment of the new monitoring officer. I'd just like to do it, just to say a thank you personally to Scott Waldridge, who would be the outgoing monitoring officer. I think he's done an amazing job over the period from, I was lucky enough to experience Julian Gale's role, and now Scott. And I'd just like to propose a vote of thanks for Scott for the work he's done. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, very happy to second those thoughts. I know Scott's not with us today, but he's a hugely valued member of staff, and very pleased that he's going to stay on as part of the team. I understand. My congratulations to David and Claire for their roles as well. Thank you.
Okay, if we now move to the vote, you have the recommendations in front of you. Can I please see a show of hands, all those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? So that is carried. Okay, we move on to item 10, which is report from the Standards Committee. Councillor John Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to stand up so you can see who's speaking, and also
I need the exercise. You've got the papers in front of you, but I just want to highlight a couple of points. Firstly, this is the first year of the Standards Committee, and we've taken a long time reviewing what we're doing, and that's part of what comes to you today. Second thing is that when in part of that review, we found we're sadly undermanned in certain areas, and so we put this recommendation about the Vice Chair forward. And that's affected us both in terms of the meetings we have as a Standards Committee, but also in terms of hearings. So I hope you'll support the recommendations, which are threefold: to amend the Standard Committee terms of reference to the Constitution to include the appointment of a Vice Chair, the committee's nomination of Councillor Brian Smedley for the role of Vice Chair, and to request that the Independent Remuneration Panel consider and recommend to the Council whether the role should be awarded a special responsibility allowance, and if so, at what level that should be set at. Commend you to support that recommendation.
Thank you. Can I move to Lee Redmond, who's seconding the recommendation?
Yeah, happy to chair. We reserve a right to speak if necessary. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions? If not, we will then move to the vote. Can I see a show of hands all? That's okay. Oh, show of hands, all those in favour? Any against? And any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. We move on to item 11, which is a report from the returning officer decision. And I pass over to Duncan again.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report really is to ask council to set the fees and charges that this council will run for elections that we're responsible for. As a returning officer, I could do that, but I'm much more comfortable actually if you do that. And it's all out in public domain that these fees and charges have been seen by you and set by you. If I could refer councillors to the table at the very top of the second page in 3.1, that sets out the types of elections we're currently responsible for. A number of those, such as national polls, the government will tell us what the fees and charges are. We get a schedule effectively, and that's what we operate under. The ones where it says Somerset Council, Parish and Town, those are the ones that we have to set fees and charges for to run ourselves. And what you'll see in the appendices, the schedules for each of those different types of election. Apologies, I have had comment from councillors that these are complicated. Could parishes understand what this means for them effectively? What would happen if a parish wanted to run a poll, for example, or there was by-election? We would give them an estimated cost, but they would be based on these. The reason for the complexity is it does depend on the number of seats that are being contested, if they're contested or not, the number of seats that have been elected, whether it's one division or one area rather, or multiple wards, and also the size of the electorate. And some of this has to be estimated because it's actually the time of people involved to do things like counting the votes and so on the postal ballot opening. So it's not straightforward in terms of someone being able to look at it and say, this is what it means exactly for your parish at this given time. But if any parish or town or city council does have a request, we will give them an estimate of the cost up front so they will know what that would look like. The reason it's set out in this way instead of rather than more global figures, this is also the authority to pay the individuals involved these fees. So this isn't just effectively a schedule of charges, which if it was only that, we would have been able to simplify down. This is also effectively setting the fees that we pay the presiding officers, the deputy returning officers, etc., and all sorts of other things like the expenses. So hence it is a little bit complicated if you want to look at it as just a schedule of charges, but it actually sets fees and charges for both purposes. So I'll stop at that, Chair. Thank you.
Bill Evans.
Thank you. To formally propose and reserve the right to speak if there is a debate on this, I think it is standard, and thank the officers for their work in bringing this forward.
Okay, if I can just go to John Hunt, who seconded, then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, happy to second that, Chair.
Francis Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course we have to do this. Of course parish councils don't have a choice whether they have an election or not. There ain't no point in giving them an estimate. They've got to pay it. It doesn't make any difference. They either have an election or they don't, and every 4 years they do have an election. They have to set their preset. On the basis of this, they have absolutely no idea what they have to put in their budget, in their preset, to make sure they can cope with an election if they need one. Many of them are running on presets, the little parishes, of £1,000 to £3,000 a year. They will be bust if they don't know what they need to do.
And I absolutely understand that it's really quite difficult if we don't if we want to have this very detailed and almost personalised system. And I absolutely understand the need, the wish to do that. But I think we ought to think again about whether we can at least give some scenarios to parishes, and they can actually have a look and consider what they need to do when they come to their precept.
Thank you. Duncan, would you like to reply?
Yes, thank you. I think I followed that. I'm a little bit confused about whether we're giving them estimates or not now. If they don't know what the costs are, the best way of us helping would be to give them an estimate. So we
They
can
need
do
the
that.
estimate before they set their precept, not when they have an election.
Yes, and we can do that when they ask us to give them an estimate. So some of the parishes will be asking for this over now to look at 4 years. There is enough information in here for everyone to work out what their costs would be, because they can look at, if it's the all-out election we're talking about, they know how many seats, they know roughly what the population is. They'll have to make some guesses, as we would, about the length of time it would take, but they can do that based on previously. So it is possible from this information. What we're saying is, when we're asked, and that could be now, we will provide that information. If, as a view that all the parishes want that now and they ask us for it, then we'll do a calculation for all of them. So we're quite happy to do that. It's more, to be honest, the estimate is when we're looking at by-elections or if people want to undertake polls and so on. The election that we held last time will probably be the best guide for roughly what the cost will be for the election we held next time, if it's the all-out election for each parish. That's the best guide, because these fees and charges aren't significantly different, and it is possible to use that as the estimate and update it with these changes. But we're very happy to provide individual estimates to parishes if they ask us to do so, at whichever point.
I feel you're coming back, Francis.
Thank you very much. I welcome that. 23 parishes and 19 councils will be asking you, I hope, within the month, because they are really concerned about making sure that they are prepared and properly organised for the future on a very, very tiny budget. And I feel fairly uncomfortable about saying, oh, well, you really can work it out. And if you ask us, we'll tell you.
Are there any further questions? Yes, Ros.
I appreciate this is based on cost recovery, I hope, because for the smaller parishes, you're talking of quite significant sums. And I'm sure the point being made is that you can ask for an indicative figure at the beginning of your budgetary process, and that's fine. I was just looking at the hourly rate for account assistant, and well, I will take it offline. I just really question whether it is cost recovery.
No. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was just happy to discuss offline with Councillor Wyke. The point in terms of parishes and the existing, with the exception of Taunton Town Council, all parishes already have raised precepts for elections. The only difference we're talking about as a result of this paper is the fact that some of the fees and charges have been updated. So the actual impact on any parish that exists, with the exception of Taunton Town Council, is going to be fairly marginal, because it's only the differential between the previous fees and charges and these fees and charges. They are already precepting for the elections.
Christine Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if the local community network, when they get started, could have some training for parish councils, because it does change. People do need help to support and work in parish councils. So it might be a good way of getting parishes together to learn a bit more about this subject, which is very dear to their hearts, because lots of them don't precept much at all, because they're trying to be as generous as they can for their communities. So if that could be arranged for somebody to go round to the local community networks and explain it to them in a bit more detail, I think that might be really helpful.
Okay, I think your suggestion has been acknowledged, and we'll look at that. Are there any further questions? If not, John, do you wish to come back?
No, I'm fine, thank you, Chair. I think all that's been said by Duncan is fine, thank you.
Bill? Okay, then we'll move to the vote. Can I have a show of hands, all those in favour? Any against? That's one. And any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. We move on to item 12, which is the report from the Executive Director of Public Health. Only we have the Deputy Director with us, Lou Woolway. Lou?
Thank you. I thought Bill was going to introduce it, but I can introduce it. Good afternoon. I'm Lou Wilway. I'm Deputy Director of Public Health. Trudy is on a very well-deserved annual leave at the moment, so I'm in. So this paper is looking at the Somerset Board. It came to full council back in last October, setting the strategic direction. It actually is quite complex because it picks up different elements. So it picks up the Health and Wellbeing Board, which is a body of full council, and it picks up the Integrated Care Partnership, which is a part of the Integrated Care Board, which looks at the health and care strategy and delivery of that, working in a partnership way. Normally, in these instances, the Integrated Care Partnership sits above a number of health and wellbeing boards, a number of local authorities, and a number of ICBs. In Somerset, we're a single footprint, so it's been a little bit more complex. It might sound simple, but it's been a bit more complex to sort it out. So the proposal is to have a Somerset board. This will be the strategic partnership board, setting the strategic vision for the county around really what it is to live and work in Somerset, all those factors that impact on both the health and well-being of us all and our residents, and the health and care side of the equation as well. So the plan is to move to the Somerset board. It is also to extend the membership in order to capture the breadth of all those important factors that impact on health and wellbeing and health and care in the county. We are looking at about 33 proposed members. It is much bigger, but it is much wider in order to pick up all of those concepts that influence. So the ask is to approve the move to the Somerset board and to approve the terms of reference for both the Health and Wellbeing Board element and the Integrated Care Partnership element. It's really difficult to explain, but Somerset board members would be triple hatted almost. They would be a member of the Somerset board. They would also be a member of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and they would also be a member of the Integrated Care Partnership, because there are statutory functions that must be delivered through the board when it exists. So it's been through some quite complex legal and community governance pathways to get to here, and there needs to be a recognition that at times we might have to minute different parts of the board to meet those statutory functions. So unless there's any further questions, I think that explains sort of the direction of travel.
Bill.
Thank you, Lou, so much, and apologies for any confusion with the chair's schedule and previous notes. I had to step out of the pre-meeting and didn't raise it with the chair, so that's my apologies. I think the one word that we've just got to have how complex this has become legally, but the reality is it's a simplification, because we have what's called coterminosity. We've got the same boundaries for the NHS and the councils. That's a unique opportunity for us, and it will make the system simpler. So although this looks complex, the end result will be simpler, and I'm happy to commend this to the council. I believe on the schedule it's down for Councillor Dance to propose. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose this and thank the team for all the work, and thank Bill for his great chairing of the Health and Wellbeing Board. Lucy did want to second it, but Lucy's had to leave, so I'm hoping that Mandy will now second that. Brilliant, thank you, Chair.
Mandy.
Thank you. The chair's on it. He's ahead of you. So thank you. Firstly, to say this feels like quite a journey, and it seems some considerable time that we've been discussing this. So it's really great to see it, and I really welcome that closer working between ourselves and health colleagues. I think it help improve services right across the county. I would love to have had a different name, because I don't think anybody will know what the Somerset board does. I think it could be all sorts of things. And I think the Health and Wellbeing Board and the Integrated Care Partnership were very clear. So I'd love them to reconsider them. Yeah, I love them to reconsider the name, which they probably wrote. Just some things for me to note, really, and just to put a marker in the sand. From the start of this process, I've really stressed that it's really important that we're able to scrutinise the work that goes on. We do that as a council, less so in health. So I hope what the council does and that open scrutiny will continue for all the work that's going on. And I think transparency is really important. The only other thing, again, moving forward, it'd be really interesting whether I think it's 3 meetings a year will be sufficient. I think they're going to be lots and lots of agenda items to discuss, and it's really important that the public are there to hear and discuss them. I'm sure there will be other meetings in between, but I just think it's really important, really positive, but really important that our public can get that access. We've heard from some of them today, and I think there'll be an opportunity here for them to have another forum to do that. Thank you.
Bill, did you want to come?
Yeah, just happy briefly to respond to that. I've got similar question mark about the name, but it's about what it does ultimately that it will be judged on. It's a minimum of 3 meetings a year. Clearly, there will be times when it needs to meet more frequently. Also important that when we're tackling some of the more open-ended issues that it can meet in a workshop type session to be able to just as our scrutiny committees do, to be able to do that. In terms of the scrutiny point, I've got every confidence in the chair of Adults and Health Scrutiny to hold us to account.
Lee Redmond.
I'm pleased to say that the last speaker stole part of my response in relation to scrutiny. I was going to ask about the level of challenge. It's heartening to hear the leader make reference to the scrutiny body being similar to the way we are, and scrutiny being through our Adults and Health Scrutiny Committee. Just a small point, my concern is the fact that the scrutiny committees at the moment only appear to have about 6 meetings each. And I'm pretty certain, based on the previous 4 years, 5 years of history that we've had, that the agendas are either going to get very long, or we need to find a way to make that a little bit better, because this body in itself could probably take up most of those scrutiny meetings. So my response to that, thank you, Mandy, for asking about the scrutiny. I'd just like to express a minor concern in the fact that if we're going to have the level of transparency that we need, there may be some issues about just because of the limited number of meetings that are currently programmed.
Bill?
Yeah, so your point is well made, Councillor Redmond. I should have also said, of course, some scrutiny will come through your committee as well, where it affects young people, children and families as well. And I suspect it may well go look at other scrutiny routes if it's to do with the community issue as well. So it's not just the Adults and Health Scrutiny where the scrutiny work will be done. We are very aware that we're a new council with a new constitution. We've come up with what we think will be right, and that will be under a state of constant review as we go through the coming years. And if we need to adjust those arrangements because agendas are too full, and we will do whatever is needed to make sure that we got that transparent scrutiny that we all value.
Hey, perfect.
Thanks, Chair. I'd echo probably most of the concerns that we've heard about the meeting numbers and everything, but just following on from what we talked about with the stroke unit earlier, looking at the representation on this board. Councillor Dance and myself have both served as council members on the hospital trust boards, and will recognise that there are publicly elected governors who sit on those boards who don't seem to have a voice in this. We've got non-exec directors from the trust, we've got exec from the trust, but there are other elected people within this county who don't seem to be on here unless I've missed it. I've trawled through many times, and I think it would be a shame to not see that representation. People are taking time to vote for their governors. They're a key part of those trusts. And then my other question is more of an ask to keep an eye on something. We have 2 representatives from education and 1 representative from university on this board. Now we've got early years, primary, secondary, and FE, as well as HE, who are getting their own representation. I just want to make sure that when we're talking about health and well-being of our young people, that we're across that whole spectrum, because if we end up with a university representative, an FE representative and a secondary representative, who are often the ones who've got the time and resources to put people forward for this, where's the voice for early years, where's the voice for primary? So can we please make sure we get that balance? Education is a very wide platform, and I'm concerned to make sure that all our young people get the right health outcomes through this. Thanks.
Yeah, on your second point, I think it's well made, and we need to make sure that balance is there. On your first point, we can go back and have a look at that composition to see whether, but we need to be mindful of the size as well, because it's a board, and it can easily turn into a conference, and there needs to be that balance, right? But your point is well made, and we will go back and take a look at it.
Right, do either, oh, Adam, sorry.
Yeah, just to also say there will be work programmes which will bring in members of the public and stakeholders as well. So there is going to be more than 6 meetings. It's just to make sure that the meetings aren't full up, like Bill just said, as a whole conference sort of issue, when we can bring members of the public and other councillors and stakeholders in on certain issues. And I do take your point about membership of the board. On that point, I also think with the 5 councils coming together, we originally had 5 places on the hospital governance board. That's now gone down to 2. And actually, there is some sort of challenge we should be having with the NHS to say, you're bringing 2 boards together, you're bringing Yeovil and Musgrove together. Surely we should have more than 2 representation, because actually, it doesn't matter what political party you're in, we all have interest in that area, and we should be able to have more than just 2 portfolio holders on that. So we are going to, hopefully, I think I've spoke to Bill about this before, we are going to try and take that up with the NHS to see if we can have more places on that board, if possible, to support everyone.
Andy.
Thank you. I very much support that. I'm really happy if we can help with it. Please let us know. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further comments, if we can move to the vote on that one, can I have a show of hands, all those in favour? Anyone against? And any abstentions? So that is carried. Before we move on, unfortunately, it's confession time, and I pass you over to the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. I have an apology to Council. When I presented the recommendations on the redundancy report, I missed the addendum, which was circulated, because I've got a paper copy, because it's easier, and it wasn't in the paper copy. So I apologise, but members had been circulated additional paper, which was an addendum, which is not an LGR redundancy. It's a redundancy by the operation of the library service. I'm afraid, Chair, I do apologise, to ask members if they're happy to approve that redundancy as well. So apologies to Council for my error on that, and with the fact that we're going back to that item.
Andy.
Thank you. I have raised this with you already, but it was just a concern that something was rushed through so quickly and is very easily missed, as we've seen today. So it's just that plea really with officers to get things into a timetable early to save a late paper coming and causing the stress. That would be much appreciated, but absolutely support. We need to vote on it today. Thank you.
Okay, going backwards, Bill, are you happy to propose?
I thought Adam was proposing.
Oh, Adam, sorry.
Sorry, this is the addendum. Sorry. Sorry, what am I proposing? And yes.
Mandy, are you happy to second the proposal?
I think as it's separate to LGR and faded the last, it's quite nice to separate. No, I'm happy to. Thank you.
Could I have a show of hands then, please? All those in favour? Any against? And there are any abstentions? Right, that's carried.
And apologies, Chair, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, we move on to item 13, which is the motions. And the first one, Lee Redman, if you could start the ball rolling.
Chair, thank you. I speak to the motion as published in the papers. Chair, members, thank you for the opportunity to move this important motion. Important because under our corporate parent role, we need to do everything we can to support our young people. Ours, because we should treat children looked after in a way that we would want our own children treated. After our election, we all had a chance to take part in the corporate parent induction. The fact that we all became corporate parents upon election took a number of us by surprise. I think if you didn't get a place on the corporate parenting group or children's scrutiny committee, sometimes it's hard to immediately understand your role as a corporate parent, and more importantly, how you can affect change for the young people we look after. This council has done a lot of work on this over the past few years, including the Care Leavers Covenant. That was the machine, not me. The Care Leavers Covenant. Oh, by the way, Executive Member for Children's Services, that was in 2020. So perhaps there's a need to revisit this with the new council. We already do a great deal for our children looked after and our care leavers, but when and where we can, we should do more. But today, this is one thing all councillors can do to make a real change and support the children and young people we are responsible for. By voting for this motion, you can make a real difference. The motion includes some pretty harrowing statistics, like the UCL study, which showed 10% of care experienced people die early, or Become Charities research that shows 50% of people who are in custody up to the age of 21 have been in care, or the facts contained in the independent review of children's social care that shows a quarter of the homeless population is care experienced. This motion is already being adopted by councils around the country, taking the issue into their own hands. We know that care experienced people are faced with so many barriers in their lives. We're not seeking to change legislation with this motion, although I do hope the legislation will indeed change at some point in the not too distant future, in line with one of Josh McAllister's recommendation in his independent care review. I want to quote an amazing gentleman. His name is Terry Galloway. He joins us virtually today. Terry tells me that this motion is about ensuring that care experienced people are heard in places that they may not have been heard before. Terry has been travelling the UK, leading this campaign for care experience to become a protected characteristic. Today, he is hoping we will become the 31st council to pass this motion, and that it does so unanimously. Terry's sister Hazel was also brought up in care. They were separated, both suffered trauma and abuse and were left with no support. She wanted love and a sense of belonging and tried to have her own family, but it was too much. Her trauma was never resolved. She ended up addicted to drugs and alcohol, and her own children were taken from her by social services. She was broken. It was then when Terry and Hazel made a promise to change the care system together, so they did not suffer like them, so others did not suffer like them. The often vulnerable care experienced young people are at risk whilst looking for love and a sense of belonging. They are getting picked off by criminal gangs, exploitation, coercion, and perpetrators of domestic violence. Care experienced people are hidden from view. This motion is about making sure care experienced people are heard and that Somerset Council think about them in everything we do. It's not about calling on our, it's also about calling on to follow us and think about care experienced people in everything they do. In conclusion, Terry has asked me today if you would consider, if you were no longer present in this life and your children or your nieces or nephews had to come into care, what would you want for them? Would it be a broken system where 50% of young prisoners up to the age of 21 are from care, or a world where 25% of homeless population is from care? I want us to be part of the campaign. That is why I am bringing this. That's why I'm asking you to show compassion right here, right now, and back this motion. We will be in a very small group of councils in the southwest to support the motion. Let's be a voice for these young people. It's something tangible, immediate, and impactful we can do as councillors right now. I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. We move now to Francis Nicholson.
I'm very happy to echo every word that Lee has said and to second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Deciman.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to thank Lee very much and Francis for bringing this to this council. And what I would say is that is on behalf of Terry and Hazel and all of our care experienced people, those who are young and old, older, I think we should
support this motion. I think it's brilliant that you've done this. I thank you very much indeed. And I too hope that everybody will feel they can support this. And I commit to reviewing. I'd like to work with Lee, if I may, to review anything that we need to update since any actions that were taken previously. Thank you very much indeed, Chair.
Amanda Chilcott.
Thank you. I really welcome this motion, and I have to say a huge thank you to Terry. You're a star. It's a huge piece of work and a huge challenge that is undertaken, and I hope momentum gathers and every council around the country will sign up. For those councillors that are not involved in the corporate parenting board, I would commend it to all. It does make changes, and some of the work that's gone on will help improve lives, and there's nothing more powerful than hearing from a young person personally of their experiences. And for me, some of the most momentous memories of being a councillor have actually come from the voices of young people and hearing them. So I would encourage everybody to get involved. The more that gets involved, the more you can understand and then start to hear the voices and speak for some of these young people on occasions. We're all here, we're all councillors, and we need to speak up for them loud and clear, and I'm glad to support this motion today.
Any further comments? If not, we then go back to Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said, I'm delighted to second the motion. I echo every word that's been said. This is more than about, this is a matter of principle over and above and beyond corporate parenting. It's about equality. It's under the Equality Act, and the elimination of discrimination, of harassment, of victimisation, the advancement of the equality of the opportunity, and the fostering good relations between those who share and those who do not share relevant protected characteristics. This is right, absolutely right, of course. The most important thing is equality of opportunity. We've got the characteristics in the legislation. We've also got our locally adopted characteristics. We've done that in Somerset to make it fit Somerset. We've got it in the guidance for filling in impact assessments. It's there on the pro forma to make sure we do that. Now, this is what we need for care experienced people. We're adding it, I don't have to say not before time, because it's right for Somerset, and as Lee said, right for everywhere. So let's see the other 100 and whatever councils taking it up as well. Those people, and it's important this, people of all ages, whose start in life has been the most difficult possible, who for their very safety had to be brought into the care of the public authorities, face challenges because of that experience that are lifelong. So it's entirely right that they should know that we are adopting care experience as a locally protected characteristic, that we should be explicit about eliminating discrimination, harassment and victimisation, and about advancing equality of opportunity, about fostering good relations. And to do that, we absolutely have to hear their voice. And this is the right way to do it. So I too hope very much that each and every one of us will vote for this very timely motion.
Thank you. Lee, would you like to add anything before we move to the vote? No? Okay, so we'll give a show of hands, please, now, all those who accept the motion. Any against? And any abstentions? Okay, that is carried. So we move on now to the second motion, and Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chairman. The motion's been put before you. However, I've had a lovely conversation with Councillor Philip, and I'd like to make a couple of amendments to the motion I've put forward. So perhaps if I could read out what the amendments are, then I'll say a few words afterwards. Just for
yes, please do.
On Somerset Council notes, we are removing, and you've had this in writing, so we're removing where it says there are at least, we're changing that to there are over. On the second sentence where it starts with most notably, we're changing that to including. And at the end of that particular paragraph in Somerset Council notes, we're including an additional one, which reads that the introduction of the £2 bus fare by the Department for Transport at the start of this year, which has now been extended, as lobbied for by Somerset Council, to the 31st of October, moving to £2.50 until November 24, has reduced the financial barrier to public transport. At the end of Somerset Council believes an additional paragraph which reads, ensuring affordable and accessible public transport for young people across Somerset is key to delivering the agreed objectives of the council plan for a greener, more sustainable Somerset and a fairer, ambitious Somerset. And the wording of the resolution, we are amending slightly to read, this council reaffirms its commitment to working with bus operators across Somerset to establish an affordable Somerset-wide discounted bus pass for 16 to 25-year-olds. That's the amended wording for the motion I've submitted, and I just want to say a few words on that. I think we must acknowledge the current state of bus fares targeted at young people in Somerset. There are over 10 different bus operators, each offering varying youth bus fare options, 7 of which only provide youth fares during term time and college days only. We firmly believe that young people should have access to affordable and reliable bus transport throughout the entire year, and regardless as to whether or not they are in education. The current limited availability of youth fares, coupled with challenging costs for young people, has deterred many young people from using our local bus services. The Bus Service Improvement Plan survey revealed that 38% of 16 to 25-year-olds cited cost as the primary reason for not using buses more frequently, with a staggering 44% stating that they did not use local buses at all. By simplifying bus travel and making it more accessible and affordable for young people with a single county-wide youth bus pass, we not only address their concerns, but also align with our commitment to decarbonise the county for greener transport options. Accessible and affordable bus transport also holds immense potential for young people, particularly those living in rural communities who often face social isolation. By providing them with reliable means to connect with education, employment and social activities, we can foster greater community cohesion and break down the barriers of isolation. Now, with the brilliant announcement of the government-backed reduced bus fare scheme, as we've already mentioned, which was actually announced after I had submitted this motion, I think the council actually now has an even greater opportunity to negotiate discounted rates for a youth pass. I believe that this government support will encourage greater participation from bus operators, which can foster the long-term sustainability for a youth pass scheme. The government's announcement of an additional £300 million investment to protect bus services until 2025 will safeguard the availability and accessibility of bus services for the foreseeable future. This stability is crucial for the success of a youth bus pass initiative, as it relies on the collaboration and commitment of bus operators and makes it more likely that they'll be willing to participate in a youth pass scheme. I believe, therefore, that these new announcements should actually encourage this council to perhaps double down and to move faster and make the most of the opportunity to implement a youth scheme that could cost a lot less to implement than would have had the government not made these announcements. I'd also just like to say that it's important to note that the ambition for a youth pass is a shared commitment made by both ourselves and the Liberal Democrats to the electorate. And I must say this, that at a February full council meeting, the lead member for Transport, Councillor Rigby, responded to my question about introducing a youth bus fare to say, and I've quoted this, within the budget that we've got, we think that we can make that work with a view to implementing it in time with the new school year, starting in September, using existing funds. Chairman, I think that it's a positive thing that this ambition has such great support across the entire council, and I hope that it becomes a reality which will make a meaningful difference to the lives of our young people. Chairman, I ask members of this council to stand united in the commitment we've made to our young people by voting for the motion put before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I move to John Hunt, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm very happy to second this. I reserve my right to speak at the end, but I would just like to point out very briefly that whichever party, Conservative or Lib Dem, had asked me to second this, I would have said yes to that question. So this isn't a party thing from that perspective. And I also have had and read and am happy with the amendments that have been made to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Points? Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to also express strong support for the proposal for discounted bus passes for 16 to 25s, which includes college students and, of course, other young adults as well. I think this is very important and something that we most definitely wish to see. I particularly wish to draw attention to the size of costs involved at the current time for young people. And just picking out what it costs college students to attend. And I represent a rural area, so travelling into to Taunton to attend college. Normally it will cost close to £1,000 per year. So it's about £950 a year in bus fares to get to college. The current discounts take about £200 off that, which of course is welcome. It'd be great if we could see even bigger discounts on those currently available. But it also needs to be borne in mind that this is a big cost. And so with a discounted scheme, I think for some will need help with covering the size of the cost over the year. So we also need to bear that in mind with however a discounted bus pass is structured. But the idea is great and most definitely need it. So do give it strong support. Thank you.
Mike Rigby.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Rodriguez, for your motion. As you know, we have a manifesto commitment to deliver a young person's discount card for bus travel in Somerset. This would replace the county ticket that was abolished before we took office, particularly for those who are in education. And we intend to deliver on that commitment at the earliest possible opportunity. As Councillor Rodriguez mentioned, the current £2 capped fare scheme has been extended. We're obviously really pleased with that and lobbied the Department for Transport to do that last month. And that goes on until the end of October this year and then continues at a slightly higher rate of £2.50 until November 2024. Our officer advice is that introducing a further discount scheme on top of the £2 and soon to be £2.50 fare will cause complications for the operator, making it very difficult, if not impossible, for them to report the usage figures back to the DFT and therefore make their claims. And there's also the risk that the DFT exempt routes from the £2 fare, where alternative fare schemes are implemented, could result in the scheme cost being transferred from the government to Somerset Council, which is obviously undesirable. It's therefore not sensible to implement a discounted scheme outside of the £2 and £2.50 fare caps this year. We need to let the existing schemes run their course, which are in any case quite good value and certainly much better than the old county ticket that used to exist. So what my advice is that we continue to monitor the situation and we'll consider the optimum time to launch a local scheme for young people when and if the central government capped scheme is removed. Now, it wouldn't be a huge surprise, I think, given quite how popular the capped fare has been, if we ended up with a capped fare in perpetuity. Now, I can't say at this point what that'll be, and we won't know probably, given recent events, until a month or two before the end of October next year. But there's a reasonable prospect that that may well continue. So while those national schemes, those national incentives are in place, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to try and implement our own scheme. So my advice is that we continue to monitor that. But the way that the motion is worded, I think it fits perfectly with that. And we'll continue to work with, we'll continue to look at the optimum time for this to be launched. And that may well be next year, but it won't be this year for the reasons that I've suggested. Thank you.
Francis Nicholson.
Thank you very much. I'm notwithstanding all the complexities of a scheme that has been brought in by government as opposed to our schemes. What I feel is extraordinarily important when we're thinking about this is never to think in terms of education. This is a young people's thing. It's not about post-16 education, transport or enabling them to get there. It's about all young people, apprentices, people working, people studying. It's about all of them. So just to make sure that we never get hung up with the difference between whether it's term time or not term time, and because that's only about education. It's not where it is. And there is, and Tessa knows that I have always been uncomfortable about a decision that I know I took long ago to charge for post-16 SEN transport. And I hope this will be an opportunity to look at it again.
Did you want to say something, Tessa?
Yes, I'll say I do know that. And I've just offered Francis the opportunity of a cup of coffee to discuss this through. So it'd be really helpful. Thank you very much, Francis.
Thank you. I can't see. Oh, hang on. Yes. Tom.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to speak in really support of the thrust of this motion. Councillor Rodriguez, you keep mentioning Lib Dem policy in our manifesto at every full council meeting, so it's definitely on your bedside table, our manifesto. I'm certain of it. So thank you for reminding us of one of our key commitments. I think the cost is, of course, a barrier to entry for public transport, and I think we're all really pleased to see what has been done nationally on the cost. And I applaud Councillor Rigby and others who have put pressure on government to continue that funding, which is so essential. I think the other key thing, and it's not quite included in the motion, but I think it's important, it is the reliability of services. So all of those things that Councillor Nicholson just mentioned about getting to work, to your apprenticeship, wherever it might be, you need to know that the bus is going to turn up. Yeah, that's one thing you need to be certain of, actually. The cost is one thing and being able to get on board and pay, but actually the bus being there is also a hugely important. And again, I think it is worth at this moment paying tribute to Councillor Rigby over the last year, who has really pushed our operators hard on this. And we've started to see the improvement. And I hear it from my residents that buses are now more regular, actually, than they were before. They're turning up. And if they're not, actually, it's being communicated, which hasn't been the story of the past, really. You've stood at your bus stop waiting and no bus arrives. At least now it's getting communicated if they're not going to turn up, and they're turning up more frequently. So I think I support the motion. I think we do need to keep pushing hard on the bus operators to make sure they're fulfilling their contractual requirements. And I know that Councillor Rigby will continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. I was going to agree with Councillor Deacon that the blocker is absolutely the cost, but actually it's not just that, and it's not about reliability. It's about services existing in the first place. And I reiterate my request that Yeovil, as one of our other large towns that doesn't have a massive amount of services, that Taunton, and it's great if you're getting better reliable service in other places, but we haven't got the buses in Yeovil. People can't use them, whether they're young or old. And I would put that ask is, if we're not going to be spending the money on the youth to begin with, let's build the network so that when this pass does come in, we've got a cross-county service that they can transition wherever they want to. Thank you.
Coming from that area, well said. Right, could I, yes, sorry, yes.
I don't feel the need to speak at these meetings often, but as somebody who represents one of our many rural areas, rural divisions, I feel I need to speak up for places like the Mendip Hills, where we don't have bus services in many of the villages. And if I've got anybody from the place I grew up in, Priddy, listening online, they will be very upset with their parish meeting I'm going to tomorrow night if I don't mention the fact that I represent a rural patch, and the village I grew up in hasn't had a regular bus service since I was about 6, and I'm nearly 60.
David Warren.
Thanks, Chair. Just pick up on what Councillor Purbrick said. Once I knew Mike Rigby had been working hard towards re-establishing services across the county, I made a promise to the Yeovil Bus Users Group that if they reintroduced the service from Yeovil to Taunton, I would use it. And I am now the proud, one of the proud councillors that goes to work on a bus and taking full advantage of the £2 each way fare. And I'm now beginning to reorganise my meetings to, in other various locations with my economic development role, places like Wells, Glastonbury Street, Bridgewater, I'm starting to look at taking the bus to go to those meetings because the bus services are becoming available. And it's surprising, once you actually get into the habit of doing it, it becomes easier.
Mike Rigby, did you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that when I took on this role last year, my ambition for the bus service was that we would stabilise it. It shrunk dramatically over the previous decade and we needed to stop that. We have. And the goal then is to build back. So we've achieved that stabilisation. We defended the 173. We've saved the D2. We've saved the 126. Putting that service back on between Wells and the county boundary. We're working to extend that back on the old route all the way through to Weston. We've got the through journey, as Councillor Wone has said, between Taunton and Yeovil put back. And I've been talking to Councillor Price-Hankey this morning about trying to make some improvements in her division. So I think we've achieved goal one, the stabilisation, and to Councillor Purbrick's point, certainly we want to try and build back. We want more services in the county. As Councillor Hobbs says, there are areas of his division that haven't seen a bus since, well, I was going to say the war then, but that's probably a little bit unkind, Edric. I'm sorry, Edric, but you get my drift. It's been a while. So we'll certainly be doing that. We've got some additional funding with the ending of the bus recovery grant. We've got some additional funding through BSIP Plus. And we'll look to see what we might be able to do in areas that are desperately in need of additional bus transport, but that don't currently have it. Thank you.
Thank you. If we go back to John, do you wish to add some more comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. Everybody, I think, has said most of the things I was going to say, as ever. Councillor Rigby, you forgot the saving the number 3 service as well, which was excellent news. We like that. In terms of reliability, which is relevant to this, I myself would catch the 22 service quite often into County Hall, etc. Tried to catch it yesterday, it didn't turn up, which was a tad frustrating, but that is quite infrequent that it happens now, which is good. In terms of this motion, this is clearly a no-brainer. It is in both the blue and the yellow manifestos, as we've heard. So I'm assuming that everybody would in fact support this, and I would like to thank Councillor Fernandez for bringing this forward and asking me to second it, and I second it without hesitation. So over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Back to Councillor Rodriguez. Would you wish to add anything, or can we move? Okay, we move to the vote. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour?
Chair?
Yes.
To vote on the amendment first?
That's yeah. If the amendment was accepted, then we don't do that. It's been accepted by the proposer and the seconder, so we don't need to do it as an amendment. Right, so back to the plot. All those in favour, please show hands. Any against? And any abstentions? Right, that's carried. We move on to item 14, which is the annual report of the leader. And as the leader has left us, it would be the deputy leader delivering it. But Liz.
Thank you, Chair. May I just extend the apologies of the Leader of Council, who has had to leave early in order to fulfil a long-standing engagement in Bristol this evening. So I said I'd be his understudy as long as he left me with the script. But I don't intend to read the script in full because it is published in the papers from page 197. And I know that all of the colleagues in this room have had the chance to read it, and I'm sure they understand only too well the massive challenges of the first year since the election in May 22. We also have from page 201, Appendix 2, which is all the decisions since the 21st of February. I don't intend to go through those either. Happy to take any questions on behalf of the leader or indeed for myself. It may be that I have to produce written answers, but I'm very happy to consult with Bill and to do that if necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions of the leader or deputy? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've got a question. Obviously, a written answer. And I want to talk about Wellington Library for a minute, if I may. Because as you know, I sit as the opposite number to Ros over there, and I was supposed to be consulted on the, if you like, the Wellington refurbishment. Unfortunately, people couldn't get hold of me. I was in London. Unfortunately, the person in question, the officer, unfortunately didn't leave the phone number. And I would certainly have had something to say about it, because what I'm led to believe, and I know for a fact, Chairman, through you, is that 1.4 million pound refurb. Why did you take 100 and something thousand pounds from Bridgewater Library when that was due to be refurbed as well? And my argument is clearly when it went to contract, that contract was underfunded. But the question I'm trying to ask, and I'm not making a very good job of it, and forgive me for that, is the fact is for 100 and something thousand quid up a 1.4 million pound contract, that puts now Bridgewater Library behind and won't be actually action between 24 and 2025. And the response I got off the officer was, if at all. I'm sorry, I don't find that acceptable, Chairman. The fact, if at all, where the money was allocated to it, why has it been taken away? Why couldn't that money have been found elsewhere? It's 100 and something thousand quid out of a 1.4 million pound contract. I know that questions can't be asked, but on behalf of the people of Bridgewater, one of the questions I'd like to ask was Bridgewater Town Council consulted in this? If not, why not? Because clearly a lot of people use the library in Bridgewater. So I'll leave it there, Chairman, if I may, because I know it's a question that can't be answered at the moment, but I really would like to get to the bottom of this. For £100,000 when, and I quote, we've just saved £2.6 million, haven't we? So why can't we allot the £100,000 to Bridgewater Library? Sorry, Chairman, it's a bit of a rant.
Chair, point of order, please.
I'll accept a written answer.
Point
Just
of
a point
order,
of order,
Lee.
forgive me. Could you ask members to make reference to the page number and relevant items that they're talking about when they speak to questions? Because my reading ability seems to fail me at times.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Yes, you're very much right, and I wrote it down, and it was in, sorry, forgive me for a minute. It was, no, I'm sorry, I can't. What I'll do, I'll send everybody an email on it, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I'm very happy that we'll respond in writing. I know one of the tasks for this summer is to review the entire capital programme, and I'll make sure that we do consult with you on anything to do with libraries or anything else, indeed, where you shadow Ros White. I think Ros is able to come in at this stage, if that's
Yeah,
okay,
that's fine,
Chair.
Ros.
Yeah, very happy to do so. We have a limited budget. We all agreed the budget in February. Meanwhile, since last autumn, we have all seen construction prices go through the roof, and therefore there has to be a very hard decision as to how we deliver programmes, given the unplanned, unexpected, whatever you want to describe it, but horrendous increase in construction costs. The projects have been value engineered, they have been really carefully scrutinised, and yes, you're right, the Wellington project was shortfall amount of money. Alongside it, there was the work for the very beautiful library in Bridgewater, which needs, it's a Carnegie building is quite significant and needs a lot of work, including protecting the roof, and then a lot of work around access and all the other things. A hard decision had to be made as to what you need to do. And at that stage, where the building at Wellington was such that you couldn't even go into the top floor and you could actually use the building, it had to be prioritised. Now, it doesn't mean to say that we don't, in the year to come, find the money to complete the work on Bridgewater. We are in year prioritising making sure the roof is fixed to protect the building in Bridgewater. And that sounds always a couple of tiles, but actually it's quite a fundamental thing. And so, yes, there are going to be hard decisions in this council as to what we do and what priority. But what we're trying to do is make the very best of the money we've got. So yes, the and the Wellington Library will be refurbished. It will be refurbished appropriately so that we will be able to use the whole building. We will be able to access the upper floors. It will be decarbonised and it will be fit for purpose for the future. There is not an either or. Then we'll be looking at the rest of the work needed to done for the Bridgewater Library. But you can't, there's no money tree we can shake, I'm afraid. The reality is that we need to do things in the right order. Now, I understand that the decision was, as you indicated, the members, local members were consulted and were told that this was going to happen. And more than that, I will put in writing if you want some more detail. But that's the essence of what is happening and what will continue to happen. We will have to make hard decisions in this economic climate. We've got to respect the fact that all our construction costs, or whether it's school maintenance or for any of the major projects, have to be really carefully managed, because as any of you in the room who are in construction will know, you can't even hold a steel quote for more than a couple of weeks. It is really tough at the moment. And so I think the officers have made a really appropriate decision. I'm very happy to defend it.
Yeah, do you want to come back?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I don't want to prolong this meeting, Chairman. I think if that's okay with Councillor White, we need a conversation outside this room. But what concerned me, if I've got this right, and forgive me, Councillor White, did you say the roof had a problem in Bridgewater? It was the roof?
There is work going on this year on the roof of the building, because that is the critical thing, and that's the one we found money to afford to make sure it happens.
Mandy, is this on this same point? I have someone else waiting.
It is, and we're on questions for Liz, I believe, as well. So it's all connected. So thank you. Just to say, really a bit of a plea. We are underspent on the capital programme across the whole programme, and money that should have been tied up within projects hasn't been used and utilised. So it's just I suppose the urgent plea to support Bridgewater and the library there, if we perhaps could have a tighter control on the capital programme, and I know that's difficult, that might be a way to free up money to deliver some of the other projects, but I will leave that for you.
Yeah, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. That's the review of the capital programme that I referred to. So I've already discussed with Jason Vaughan, 151 officer, the slippage, and then the lesser need for borrowing, but the greater percentage of interest on any borrowing and replacing any short-term borrowing. So there is quite a significant piece of work to be done this summer to understand that slippage, understand the additional pressures that Ros Wyke has referred to, and have a look at what is possible, because it is an incredibly challenging time for the construction industry. And those of us on town deal boards know exactly what has happened to all those capital projects. And it's a sadness to me that the Bridgewater Library wasn't included in the Bridgewater Town deal, but it isn't, and we can't go back and revisit that decision. Thank you, Chair.
Jill Slocum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'll stand again so you can see me. This is just a plea within Deputy Leader in the MTFP. I would just like to ask whether you could review the grass cutting. The grass cutting issues I've been called by many, even outside of my ward, so this is a generalisation. This no mow May really went down so well. If Councillor Bradford had more goats, or had any goats, I would have called them in. It's so bad, and I've just had so many complaints, and people really, such an emotive subject about the grass cutting. I get about the biodiversity, I get about the fact that we've done this, but I would ask you, you've cut the grass cutting by halfway on most areas. And in some areas where there are more grass verges than others, my fellow councillor, Councillor Duddridge and I, we have in part of one ward, lots and lots of grass verges. In the other ward, we haven't got hardly any. So absolutely, and there must be loads of people out there having the same thing. But you know what, if our communities can't see it neat and tidy, then I've had people with dogs saying that they can't pick the dog fouling up because they can't find it. It just goes on and on and on. And I would just ask you, if you could just look again at this cut, because I've checked on it and it is right. You have cut it by half. And I really would like you to review this, please, for me, because honestly, I don't want to have to get goats in. I really don't. It could cause major problems. So I really would appreciate it, Deputy Leader. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Federica, I think you wanted to come back on.
I mean, could I just, before you say, can I thank the officers for coming back to me immediately at my desperate plea? They were brilliant, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to come in here in relation to grass cutting, though I know it sits across multiple portfolios, whether it's highways or even within the Climate Change Directorate. There was, as part of coming into one council, a standardisation of the different cuts that happen because districts were picking up additional cuts on highways, as an example. And you are correct, Jill, in the fact that that was standardised to 6 cuts. And I think previously Sedgemoor used to do 10 cuts. So there has been a slight difference there. But however, moving forward, I think we need to look at across the piece and work across the different areas of the different portfolios to see what we can do moving forward, bringing in No Mo May, how we communicate that with individuals. And I know Sarah Dyke is keen in that, and we'll bring in Mike Rigby as highways as well, because it is one thing that currently does probably clog up all of our inboxes is just about the vegetation at the moment and the way that the weather has affected that to grow quite rapidly.
Sarah Dyke.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, grass cutting is a topic that divides opinion, clearly. I have got a lot of correspondence on the matter over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, the grass growth is pretty quick this year. We've had a very cold winter. Grass started growing very late, and then when it did, obviously the grass growth rates were pretty intense. So it is very difficult for the teams to get out there when it's very wet, and so they have been caught out and are doing what they can to deliver a kind of a cutting programme and in very difficult circumstances. But just on the No Mo element, I'm sure we all appreciate that No Mo is a great initiative. It really gets people actively talking about taking steps to encourage biodiversity, and obviously it helps with our bees and our pollinators. And we're committed to managing the land that we own in a way that is sympathetic to this. But things are complicated when you're responsible for such large swathes of land. So we recognise that there's frustrations across communities who would like to have seen even more impactful No May contributions over the county this year. But as Fed has already said, we are kind of dealing with the legacy of those 5 councils, all of which have taken the different approaches to operational management, and that is now obviously coming together under one hat. So for the next season, I can assure that we will be much more aligned across the council and make sure that we are very clear which areas are No Mo, where we have those verge conservation areas, and let's hope that we don't have quite such a fast growing season and our teams can keep on top of the work. Thank you.
Alan Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, I don't keep goats. That's the first thing. And secondly, there's a good old saying in farming, seasons will beat all judgments. When you've got abundance growth like you've had this year, there should be a quicker movement on some of the cutting, because this grass has been cut far too long. Then it lies down on the next layer of grass and it looks an awful mess. And believe you me, a lot of these places will never recover this year, never recover, because it's been left far too late. And that's all I'm going to say, really.
Emily Pearlster.
Thank you very much. On behalf of myself and John Bailey from the Martop Division, could I please ask the lead member for Children, Families and Education for an update to explain the delays to the opening of the new specialist school planned near the village of Ash? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank Emily and John for their question? And I would just point out to everybody in the room that this is a wider question than just affects the Martop Division. Hillview Academy is currently under construction in the village of Ash on its east side near the A303. The school is a 120 place special school for children with social, emotional and mental health needs or speech, language and communication needs. It's a free school. What that means is it's an academy that is a new school, and it's part of the Department for Education's Central Free Schools programme, which means the department, not Somerset Council, leads and delivers the capital programme and ensures the school opens successfully. I want to run through the timeline. I won't take terribly long, but it's important that people understand this. So in 2018, Somerset applied for a new special school as part of the second phase of the special and alternative provision Central Free Schools programme. In March 2019, the Department for Education confirmed Somerset's application had been successful, with the school due to open in September 2022. There were issues with surveys, design work and planning, which meant that the Department for Education advised the council that a new likely opening date was January 2023. In September 2021, the department terminated the contract with the construction company it appointed. It re-procured the project, resulting in a revised opening date of September 2023. In October 2021, the department informed Somerset County Council that it had not been able to appoint a replacement contractor to deliver the school, and the earliest possible opening date was January 2024. In January 2022, the department confirmed the appointment of a new contractor. In October 2022, last year, the department wrote to Somerset County Council saying that due to added requirements of archaeological investigation and highways agreements, the department was looking to finish the project in February 2024. In November last year, planning permission was granted. In December last year, WAVE, the multi-academy trust identified by the department to run the school, was issued a termination warning notice as another of its academies was judged inadequate. This indicated that WAVE might not be able to progress as a sponsor for Hillview Academy. The regional director confirmed this in March this year. In February this year, the department identified that the archaeological investigations had caused further delays, likely to mean an opening date nearer to Easter 2024. Earlier this month, Somerset Council was informed the new proposed opening date is September 2024. We're all crossing our fingers. Now, the implications of the delays are that Somerset, as you know, I'm sure, Somerset does not have sufficient specialist provision for pupils with social, emotional and mental health needs in the state-maintained schools. The only special social, emotional and mental health school is Skye Academy, which has space to make provision for additional children, but was judged by Ofsted as inadequate in May last year. The DFE, the Department for Education's Regions team, is now rebrokering Skye, so finding a new trust, so that in July 2023, this year, Cabot Learning Federation will take over the running of the school. Without sufficient provision, where children have social, emotional and mental health needs that cannot be met within the usual arrangements within special schools, our council agrees support by agreeing additional fund packages for mainstream schools to be able to commission additional support or alternative provision, using pupil referral units for children, young people with education and healthcare plans, and identifying placements in non-mainstream special schools. These approaches have implications for children, whereby provision may not be as complete or good as would be expected from a maintained special school. There are also financial implications, in particular with using independent non-maintained special schools, which can cost £40,000 per year. Oh gosh, £40,000 per year per child more than the equivalent place in a state-maintained setting. Although it is unlikely that Hillview Academy would take 120 pupils at its opening, the lack of these places in our school system and the resultant use of independent non-maintained special school places indicates children, families and education services will accrue an avoidable spend of approximately £1.2 million for every term that Hillview Academy's opening is delayed. I'd like to thank Emily and John again for their question. Thank you, Chair.
Francis Nicholson.
Just want to say I support everything you've said, through you, Chair, that the lead member has said. In a previous incarnation, I started raising the cost to children and their families and the damage to them, and the cost to the high needs budget overspend, which the government is terribly worried about. And would they like to make up the difference for the delays that they had caused? Answer came there none. I'm fear that it won't come now. I did involve the MPs. They didn't manage to achieve anything either. It gets worse, and I have every sympathy for you. But most of all, I have every sympathy for the children who are being damaged.
Okay, I think we've got Susan Hart online that's got a hand up. As I can't see the screen very well, but I'm told. Susanna Hart, sorry. You're muted, so I'm told. Okay.
Councillor Susanna Hart online. Could you unmute your microphone if you're speaking, please?
Okay, well, I'm afraid we'll have to move on. Are there any other questions for any of the executive members that people want to put? John Hunt.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I know we all want to go home, but I just want a very quick one. Mike Rigby, just the one question for him. It won't start a roll because obviously I'll be the last questioner, which is good. Mike, so we had the issue with the park and ride with our traveller friends over the weekend, which actually I know you personally spent a lot of time on it. I spent most of my weekend dealing with it too. And what I'd like to do, in one of your emails that you replied to the various officers who were thoroughly engaged themselves, and hats off to them and thank you to them on Friday, Saturday, and in fact Sunday they were emailing as well, which I thought was extraordinary. So well done to them. In your email, Mike, you've written, and I quote, given the regularity with which these incursions occur, could we please consider how we might configure the site to prevent their entry? As you probably know, I went there myself in June last year with the same officers that were involved with this. We did talk about, and they came up with some great ideas on what we should do. There was a bit of an issue with budget, but considering that what's happening and the cost of all this, I think perhaps we could revisit that and see what we can do with it. So I don't know where we are with that, but I would suggest you now, and I know you realise the need to get on with this. And I think that is where we are. We do need to get on with this as quickly as we can now, because it is causing, it's not just the park and ride, as I pointed out in one of the many emails that were bouncing to and fro over the weekend. It is also the residents who live close to the park and ride facility there and other council facilities as well. But it's our residents living there. They live and they are, quote, in fear. That's what they say. That's not my words, it's theirs. There are local businesses who are having to close early or not open at all. There are people who've got their cars parked in the park and ride where their cars are getting damaged, and they're just too fearful to go back to the park and ride when we've done, between us all, done such a good job to get these park and rides moving so quickly, particularly with the good fares now. So could I ask that we do get on with this? I know that's what you want. And perhaps we could meet with the police and people like that to try and find I don't know, some sort of a pincer movement, if you like, to try and help this, and a representative from the travellers too, because it would be nice to hear their side, and if they could actually help us themselves would be quite nice. Thank you.
Mike, did you want to come back? I know Fed as well has got her hand up, so whichever.
Thank you, Chair. I think there were 3 questions for me in there. In the interest of brevity, I'll say yes, yes, and yes. To expand slightly further, yes, we have given the instruction to go and have another look at what we can do to physically prevent the incursions. In terms of budget, yeah, we can go away and have another look at that to make sure that works. And having said yes to the third of your question, I've now forgotten what it is. So that was the one. I'll see you afterwards, Councillor Hunt. But yes, we'll do all of that. Thank you.
Federica, did you?
I just wanted to come in here in the round in the fact that travellers sit with the duty to travellers sits within the community's portfolio. I think there's a wider piece of work that we need to do as a council in relation to finding strategic transient sites so that we can support them in finding places for them to go whilst they're moving through the country.
100% agree. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any hands up for any further questions. So it's about the time that I should offer you another comfort break, but I would like to push on through these last items. So with your agreement, can we do that? Okay, that's fine. So we move on to item 15, paper A. I go to the monitoring officer to outline the paper.
Thank you, Chair. Mindful of the time, I will try to be as brief as possible. So this report is conveniently split into 3 different papers. Paper A is, as it's the AGM of this council, the first AGM of this council, it takes into account the political balance of the authority and the agreed allocation of committee places. It also asks for council to agree the terms of reference and the size and the quorum arrangements of each committee. Again, highlights the need or the request the agreement to continue to waive the political balance rules for standards and the 4 area-based planning committees. Approves appointment of the chairs and vice chairs as set out in the appendices, and delegates authority to myself in consultation with the political group leaders to make in-year changes to committee and joint committee appointments. If I move on to paper B, again,
Take them one at a time.
we can do if that's how you wish to do it.
Can I move to legislation, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to propose this, and I'll be calling on my colleague, Councillor Heather Shearer, to second in my place. I just wanted to make the point that although I was working on this paper with Scott Wooldridge in order to have it ready for today, I would like to extend my apologies for it coming out rather late yesterday. Because of changes to the executive, that had implications for the committees and committee chairs. That also had implications for outside bodies where they are in effect ex officio. That's the next paper. I just wanted to say too that I failed to get the entire list of planning substitutes. But I believe that is covered by the monitoring officer delegation, and so I will undertake to do that piece of work, to get it published and to get it on the website. But I am willing to propose, and I'm not reserving my right because I'd like us to crack on with this. Please, Chair.
Yeah, Heather, do you want to add any?
Just say more than happy to second it and actually commend the work done by the officers and by Liz to actually get this done as quickly as we could. I'll reserve my right, but I really don't want to have to use it to speak again. Thank you.
Mandy.
Thank you very much. Just very quickly, I absolutely support this paper, but I didn't second because I did not have sight of the paper at the time we had the meeting. And I know it's been hard and I know it's tough, but can we really sort of culture-wise moving forward look to get papers in on time? We have a lot of councillors that work, have parish council meetings. I was at 1 till 9:45 last night, and it makes it really difficult. So I know it's a challenge, but perhaps we could empower the officers if papers are not in on time, they don't come to the meeting. And I know that's a toughie, but I think for all involved, if you can put some strict guidance in place, it would help so many. I'll leave it there, but I would have seconded had I had sight of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Any other questions on this? If not, we'll move to the vote. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour? Anyone against? And are there any abstentions? There's 2. Okay, that's carried. We move on to paper B, back to the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. In a similar vein, paper B deals with the appointment of members to internal, partnership and outside bodies for the next municipal year, as set out in Appendix 1. And secondly, supports the delegation to myself in consultation with political group leaders to make any in-year changes to those appointments.
Right, Liz.
Thank you. Again, I'm very happy to propose this, and more apologies for lateness of papers. There is one thing on page 23 of Appendix 1. I've made an error on the Somerset NHS Foundation Trust. That should read Councillor Adam Dance, lead member for Public Health, with Councillor Heather Shearer as continuity for adult social care. I've discussed this with Councillor Dean Ruddle, the new executive lead member. He is satisfied that on this occasion continuity is really important. I would like to bring that forward, please, as an amendment to this paper. I'd also like to point out that the late Councillor Mike Lewis's places on outside bodies have been left vacant. We will obviously have a by-election, but that is also as a mark of respect to Mike, who, as you already know, was a highly valued colleague across the whole council. And we will, of course, from the earlier paper, be adding the Somerset board to the leaders' appointments. And if I recall correctly from the earlier paper, up to 7 elected members will be put onto that board. But today is not the day for that. So apart from that, happy to propose, and we'll call on my colleague Heather to second.
Heather, are you okay to second?
More than happy to second, thank you. I'll reserve the right, but I won't use it. Thank you.
Yes, Faye.
Thanks, Chair. I'll keep it brief. I know we all want to get out of here. I'm going to be abstaining from this vote because there's certainly a board that's disappeared that I used to sit on that there doesn't seem to be any explanation. I don't know whether it doesn't exist anymore or whether it's missing, the Somerset Growth Board. And I haven't had time to digest this properly. It would be good if we're making changes or if something is disappearing that we articulate it within the papers, because I don't feel like I've had the time to digest and I don't have the answers as to what's happening. So I will be abstaining on this one. Thanks.
Thank you. Liz, did you want to come back?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And yet more apologies. That was a message from Paul Hickson, the newly appointed service director, to say that that board will close in its current form, but there will be a new board formed. And whether that is council or leaders appointment, I'll look into that and make sure that your concerns are put forward, as well as the other councillors who are on that board. It's not been forgotten, I assure you, and I completely accept your point about changes needing to be better notified.
Diego.
Thank you, Chair. Just a really quick one as well. The Sedgemoor Citizens Advice one, which I sit on, I was just a bit confused about that because I thought it now changed to Somerset Citizens Advice. That may be incorrect.
Yep, Liz.
I can report that the work on the amalgamation of 4 of the Citizens Advice has started. They've advertised for a new chair. Doesn't include West Somerset, but we know that that's separate. That hasn't happened yet. I believe it's not expected. Please don't quote me on this. I think they said until the new year, and that they were looking to start doing all the due diligence, start the work in September. So it will be later in this financial year. It's really important because we also have to review this summer all the grants to the, what I call the voluntary sector, the VCFSE sector. We have a lot of work to do with citizens' advice. It's really important to this council. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. I think that concludes all the questions. So can we move to the vote? Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour? Any against? And any abstentions? Thank you. Moving to paper C, just to point out that in paper C there are some confidential minutes. If anybody wishes to draw on those, we would have to go into confidential session. So I would just ask if anyone wants to do that, could they declare now? Because that changes it. If not, we will proceed back to the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this paper accounts for the approval of the minutes from the legacy councils. It's a slightly odd situation, but it's the only way we can ensure that as a continuing authority, we have the ability to have the approved minutes for the decisions that were taken at the legacy councils. So they are all there in appendices 1 to 5. I know there's an awful lot of them, and just reiterating what the chair said, there are 4 confidential minutes within there. It's the role of this authority or this council to consider the accuracy of the minutes. That's their role in this situation, not to look at the decisions that were taken in terms of their validity, but just the accuracy of the minutes for the meetings. If you want to consider those confidential minutes, we will need to pass a resolution to go into confidential session.
Yes, Mandy.
Thank you. I have raised this already, but I think there was an awful lot of reading there for everybody, and for most, they won't have attended the meetings. So for me, it would have been really helpful, and I know this is unusual, but I think it's a good precedent to set to have actually captured some of the actions that are going to follow forward into this council arising from some of those minutes. I think that would have been really helpful to make sure nothing gets lost in that transition between councils. And my second point is, whilst I know we can vote on minutes if we weren't in the meeting, and I know it happens at the start of a quadrennium quite often, there will be a number of members here that will abstain because they felt that they hadn't attended any of the meetings. So it's just to explain that's the reason you'll see from our side quite a number of abstentions out of courtesy. Thank you.
Liz, back to you as proposer.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose this. I know many of us in the room will have gone back to minutes, including confidential minutes for meetings that we attended. I've certainly done that. I'm certainly satisfied. I wouldn't be proposing this if I were not. And I will call, if you may call, please, Chair, on Heather to second. Thank you very much.
Heather.
Thank you indeed. I read them also. So yes, I'm happy to second that. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no hands up, which I can't see any, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's still carried. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much. We're 10 minutes over. Thank you very much for your help and have a safe journey home.